I'd like to call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting of Seminole County to order. Today is Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. The time is approximately 9:30 in the morning. To do the invocation, we're going to be asking Amrit Powell from the Sikh Society of Central Florida, just outside of Oviedo, to do the invocation. And then after Amrit Powell, we're going to be asking to do the Pledge of Allegiance, David Kelly, which is the Veteran of the Month. All stand, please.
I am Amit Pal Singh Saini. I am the trustee of the Sikh Society of Central Florida. In my professional life, I am a radiation physicist. I want to first thank commissioners, leaders, and all the members of county officials who has invited us here. It's a great honor for us to be here. That speaks volume of your desire to be inclusive and appreciate diversity. May God give you the courage, conviction, strength, and vision to help the community, to help the last man stranded, the help he's needed, irrespective of caste, culture, religion, ethnicity, and race. May God give you the strength to make our Seminole County, to make this community a better place to live, a better place to do business, to bring prosperity, and on the principles of just and fair and equality. Today, I see a lot of veterans, and I want to thank all the veterans for their service to the nations. And we Sikhs understand that because we at one point were 20% of the British Indian Army who fought with British Army in World War I and World War II, and invite all of you to our temple, Sikh Society of Central Florida, to witness that. And in the end, I will conclude by a line or quote from our holy book, which we Sikhs pray daily. Nanak naam chardi kala, tere paane sarbata pala, which means let's pray for the welfare, well-being of the entire humanity, of the planet, and of the universe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to thank everyone for this honor and recognition. And at this time, I'd like all veterans and everyone present to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Amrit. At this time, we're going to be going to proclamations, awards, and presentation. The first proclamation will be presented by Commissioner Constantine. Commissioner.
Thank you very much. And it is with great honor that I move by the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners this proclamation recognizing United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal David Keller for his outstanding service to the United States and Seminole County. Whereas the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Space Force demonstrate a resolute spirit, and unmatched selfishness, reminding us there are few things more American than giving of ourselves to make a difference in the lives of others. And whereas throughout our country's history, generations of service members have answered the call to leave their families, their jobs, and put their futures and even their lives on the line to valiantly defend our nation. And whereas for many service members, the sacrifice has ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedoms and promise of liberty. And whereas there are more than 30,000 living veterans in Seminole County who served our nation in times of peace and war, by their service they keep America strong And whereas Lance Corporal David Keller enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1966, where he served as a rifleman for nearly 3 years. During his combat tour in Vietnam, he earned several personal decorations and medals, including the Purple Heart, Vietnam Service Medal, Vietnam Campaign Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, Presidential Unit Citation, and Meritorious Unit Citation. He was honorably discharged in 1969 and returned to his home in Stroudsburg, Ohio. And whereas Lance Corporal David Keller moved to Florida in January of 1971, where he worked for Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. In 1981, he began working for the United States Postal Service. After working for nearly 36 years for the Postal Service in Seminole County, he retired in 2017. Upon his retirement from the Postal Service, he continued giving back to his community. As a lifetime member of the American Legion Post 53, he served in various formal capacities, set up and held Christmas parties for the children of the community, and used the post for feeding homeless veterans. And whereas Lance Corporal David Keller has brought great credit and distinction upon himself, the United States of America, the United States Marine Corps, and Seminole County. Now therefore be it proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our gratitude, admiration, and respect for Lance Corporal David Keller for his outstanding service to the United States Marine Corps and the residents of Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation is presented to Lance Corporal David Keller, along with our sincere congratulations and recognition as Seminole County's Veteran of the Month.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passed unanimously. Commissioners?
Well, I'm not much of a public speaker, but I would like to thank the county commissioners for this award. On behalf of all veterans of Seminole County, I accept it. I just hope that they'll continue serving our veterans as much as we do. We try. There's a lot more that can be done, but I know every veteran around here really appreciates the recognition and everything that they get. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Applegate, you'd like to say something?
Yep. Before the next proclamation, I sent out a story last week, and I received a lot of comments about it, and I was asked to briefly tell the story today. When I look out at this incredible group of employees who served our country, they remind me of one word, and that word is the story about General Dean in the Korean War. He was the highest American soldier captured by the North Koreans. While in prison, he was tortured. At the end of one of the sessions, his captors asked him, "General, if you don't tell us what we want to know today, we're going to execute you. But out of respect for your rank, if you decide to be executed, we'll let you write a letter, final letter home. Your choice. Tell us what we want to know, or execute." He said, "Give me the envelope and piece of paper." Thinking it was going to be his last word home, he simply wrote, "To my darling wife, tell my young son the word is integrity." All of you, and not only serving our country, but the work that you've done, and most recently the work you've done during the hurricane, reminds me that all of you have embodied that word, and couldn't be more proud of all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. The next proclamation will be presented by Commissioner Herr. Commissioner?
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners, I move the following proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners proclaiming November 11th, 2022, Veterans Day, and recognizing Seminole County veterans for their outstanding service to the United States and Seminole County. Whereas at 11 a.m. on November 11th, 1918, after 4 years of bitter conflict, the world rejoiced and celebrated the signing of an armistice by the Allied forces and the Federal Republic of Germany for the cessation of World War I. And whereas to remember the sacrifices that men and women made to ensure lasting peace, on November 11, 1919, Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President, proclaimed Armistice Day in the United States. And whereas on June 4th, 1926, United States Congress passed a concurrent resolution requesting that Calvin Coolidge, the 30th President, issue another proclamation in order to observe November 11th with all the appropriate ceremonies. And whereas on May 13th, 1938, 20 years after World War I, Congress passed an act making November 11th in each year a federal holiday, a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be thereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. And whereas, in order for a grateful nation to pay homage to veterans of all wars, on June 1st, 1954, Dwight Eisenhower, the 34th President, signed into law a bill introduced by U.S. Representative Edwin Reese from Kansas renaming Armistice Day to Veterans Day. And whereas, in 1971, Richard Nixon, the 37th President, declared Veterans Day to be observed on the second Monday in November. And whereas, because the commemoration of Veterans Day was a matter of historic and patriotic significance, on September 20th, 1975, Gerald Ford, the 38th President, signed Public Law 94-97, which returned the annual observance of Veterans Day to its original date of November 11th. And whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and studies indicate that a high percentage of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life, active military service members transitioning from military service are at a high risk for suicide during their first year after military service. And whereas the National Association of Counties and National Association of County Veteran Services Officers invite the community to join Operation Greenlight and show support for veterans by lighting our buildings green from November 7th through November 13th. And whereas Seminole County appreciates the sacrifices of our United States military personnel and believes specific recognition should be granted. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners does hereby designate November 11th, 2022 as Veterans Day, and be it further proclaimed, with designation as a green light for veterans, Seminole County hereby encourages the community to join Operation Greenlight and show support for veterans by lighting our buildings green from November 7th through November 13th. Adopted this 25th day, October 2022.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passed unanimously. Commissioner, would you present the?
Yes, I do believe we have Jason Althouse, our Veteran Services Manager, and perhaps all of our veterans from Seminole County to come down.
If you're a veteran, please come down.
I was about to say, you can't see my camera, I can't see you, so just do a little bit of shifting here, so you make sure you can see me. I can squat in case I'm For sure, I think you're good. It's really loud back there. All right, the name, we're all good? All right, on my count, 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you guys.
There you go. Yeah.
Sometimes that's just how we make our decisions.
Just want to thank the Board of County Commissioners for the proclamation. I want to thank all the veterans of the county for the hard work that they do. I really appreciate the award. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board members before we move on? Here at the end, I'd like to just, I'd just like to echo, I know that Mr. Applegate talked about our appreciation for all our veterans and our staff, and this entire board, as well as all the county, share those same sentiments. So thank you for your service, and thank you for what you've done, not just for this county, but for our country and for all of us. Thank you very much. Mr. Applegate? I don't see him. I'd like to understand what we're going to do to celebrate Operation Greenlight, and if they can tell our board members individually with private briefings, I think it'd be appropriate. I just want to make sure that we're taking every effort possible to do that. Here he comes. At this time, we'll go to the next resolution, be heard from, presented by Commissioner Lockhart. Commissioner?
Commissioners, I move the following resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing Charles M. Wally, Battalion Chief, Seminole County Fire Department, for 30 years of service to Seminole County government and its citizens. Whereas Charles M. Wally, prior to the merger with the Seminole County Fire Department on October 10, 2002, began his career as a firefighter with the Altamont Springs Fire Department on August 31, 1992, and was promoted to the rank of Chief Engineer. And whereas, while the Altamont Springs Fire Department, Charles M. Wally served on the High Angle Rescue Team, Tower Team, and Hazardous Materials Team, where he has continued to serve on Seminole County Fire Department's Special Hazards and Operation Team, also known as SHOT, since November 3, 2002. And whereas Charles M. Wally was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant on July 21, 2003, and on February 14, 2021, was promoted to his current position as Battalion Chief. And whereas Charles M. Wally will retire effective October 31st, 2022, after 30 years of employment with Seminole County. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County wishes to express its appreciation to Charles M. Wally on behalf of the staff and the citizens of Seminole County for his dedicated service. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners acknowledge with appreciation the service provided to the Seminole County by Charles M. Wally and commends him for his dedication and and commitment to the job. Be it further resolved that this retirement resolution be presented to Charles M. Wally, along with our sincere congratulations and best wishes for future prosperity. Adopted this 25th day of October, 2022.
Second.
We have motion, second discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Commissioner, would you present it?
Would you mind coming down?
Hold that count. 3, 2, 1. Yes.
Wow, 30 years went by really quick, I promise you that. It's been an honor and a pleasure to serve the citizens of Seminole County, and I wanted to thank the commission and the fire chief and the fire department for allowing me to have that opportunity. I'm a strong believer that people, when I leave and I'm gone, people are not going to remember me for the things I did. They're going to remember you for how you made people feel. And hopefully that I've made everybody feel good working with them and working for them. And I sure want to let you guys know that that goes both ways. And you guys have always made me feel welcome and given me plenty of opportunities and just a great place to work for, Seminole County. And I appreciate you guys providing that for us. So I'm sure, I'm absolutely positive I'm leaving this place in good hands with our fire chief, Matt Kinley, and the remainder of the command staff and fire department, all the personnel and boots on the ground. They're wonderful people, and they're doing a great job. Thank you guys very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good luck to you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Chief Imwali and I were talking earlier before the meeting started, and just wanted to remind everyone, as if you don't already know, our veterans and members of our fire department, it's not just their service, but their families as well that are sacrificing. And he shared that there was a retirement celebration, and his son came home, surprised him from medical school, didn't know he was going to be there, and so their lives now get to change. He said he spent his first hurricane at home. He's going to actually be able to plan Thanksgiving and Christmas with his family and know that he'll be able to spend that time with them. And what an amazing realization that is, that your family now gets to have you full-time, and I know they're very excited about that. So thank you for your dedication, and thank your family for us, if you would please, for their sacrifice as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Constantine.
I couldn't let him go without saying that I was a city commissioner in Altamont Springs when he was first elected back, when he was first hired in 1992. And you look like you haven't changed at all. 30 years have done very well for you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to have an add-on proclamation that I'd like to move up, and that is Mobility Week that will be presented by Commissioner Zimbauer. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's with my pleasure I enter this proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners proclaiming the week of October 21 through 28, 2022 as Mobility Week in Seminole County, Florida. Whereas Mobility Week is a cooperative effort by the Florida Department of Transportation and its partner agencies to promote awareness of safe, multimodal transportation choices by hosting an annual collection of outreach events. And whereas this year the state of Florida will celebrate its 7th annual statewide Mobility Week. And whereas supporting Mobility Week is consistent with Seminole County's key strategic priority of increasing engagement with regional partners And whereas Mobility Week is an ideal time for counties, cities, and transportation agencies to highlight their achievements, introduce new initiatives, and/or implement new policies promoting sustainable transportation. And whereas Mobility Week is an opportunity for individuals to explore various transportation choices available and consider how multimodal transportation reduces traffic congestion, benefits the environment, and improves community health. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners herein proclaims October 21 to 28th as Mobility Week in Seminole County and encourages all citizens to explore transportation options available to them and participate in Mobility Week events adopted this 25th day, October 2022.
Second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passed unanimously. Commissioner?
And we have Ms. Stephanie Moss here from Florida Department of Transportation to accept the award.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Jill Santiago from the Florida Department of Transportation's Modal Development Office, where Mobility Week was initiated in 2016. I think you guys really summed it all up for us, but during Mobility Week, cities, counties, transportation agencies, and others host events and offer promotions encouraging Floridians to try new transportation options. This week, we're celebrating Mobility Week from October 21st to the 28th, and on behalf of the Florida Department of Transportation, we want to thank you for issuing this proclamation, and we welcome everyone to join us, and you can see our events that are posted on www.mobilityweekfl.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll go to the County Investment Advisory Report. Can we bring Scott in? There he is.
Good morning.
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 Okay, I probably have more slides today than I need, so I'm going to go through them pretty quick. I'm not sure why I put so many in. I apologize for that. Okay, so what's driving the market? Inflation's still driving the market. It is moderating. That's a good thing, but it's moderating much more slowly than the Fed would like to see, so the markets have lost patience with that. And the Fed hikes are crushing global markets. That's kind of important. So we look for a global recession, but here in the U.S., it's not going to be as deep, and it may not happen. I'm not really sure about that. But the strong dollar is certainly hurting the global markets. Stock and bond returns through the first 3 quarters of this year have been just abysmal. I wanted to point that out. The S&P was down 25%. The U.S. aggregate bond index, which is basically all of the Treasury positions over the course of the first 9 months, is down almost 15%. There's nowhere to hide. Gold is down 9%. Bitcoin is down 60%. It's just been a rough start to the year. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, I said 694. That's a Freddie Mac through about 4 days ago. I think generally speaking, it's above 7% now, up from 3.11 at the beginning of 2022. So lots going on, and that just actually is scratching the surface. I wanted to show you this. This is a slide I haven't showed you before, but this is the overnight Fed funds target. So basically, this is what your pools generally are paying, and generally speaking, your bank now accounts. And you can see that for about 7 years, it was roughly at zero. As the Great Recession started to lift. The Fed started raising rates. They dropped rates. You can see that steady fall off during the pandemic. And then the increase has been so rapid, I don't think we've seen it quite this rapid in, go back to probably 1980 is the last time it was this quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this. The only thing I want to mention is that the Fed would like to weaken the labor market. Job growth is still very strong. Job openings are still fairly strong, and the unemployment rate is still right around the lowest it's been since 1982. So the Fed is frowning at what's going on there. Wanted to show you this. This is inflation, a couple of head fakes on the year-over-year inflation. You can see where it looked like it was retreating and it came back up. We're sort of in a come back up spot right now as far as core inflation is concerned. And core inflation is primarily housing costs. So, and they are sticky, and I'm speaking specifically about rents. So, also wanted to show you this. Again, I know I've thrown a lot of slides in here, but what I want to point out is the light blue is service inflation. So service inflation, which you guys all know what that is, but that's also, it includes rents, it includes restaurants, bars, travel, has been moving up quite a bit. The gray part is goods, and goods inflation has been retreating. So there's a lot of things going in different directions. And energy isn't really driving things the way it did for several months. But that breakdown, if you get a chance to look at it, is interesting. Not going to spend too much time here except to say that the big drop in gas prices seems to have ended. We're hopeful that that's not going to be the case forever, but there is a little bit of an increase. And I think what that does is the gradual drop in inflation that we've experienced over the course of the last 4 months is not quite as certain going forward over the next couple because of the increase in pump prices. So looking at investment choices, September was a really bad month for the bond market. That's really where investors looked at inflation and said it's not happening fast enough. The Fed is going to need to be more aggressive. So if you look at those Treasury yields, they did move up again quite a bit from meeting to meeting. The good thing is that you didn't do any investing last time at all. You did a tiny bit of investing the month before. You only invested 3%. This is kind of a drain period, so that's a good thing. We'll let rates move up and invest when your ad valorem taxes come in. The pool rates have been moving higher along with Fed expectations. There's a Fed meeting next week. The Fed's expected to move 75 basis points. You have a lot of money in cash. That's going to jump up by 75 basis points almost immediately. So despite the fact that there hasn't been investing done last month, which is a good thing, you're going to see a big boost in yields just because so much money was liquid. And then finally, I want to mention that one of the banks has agreed to pay 3 1/4. They'll actually pay 4% when the Fed moves 75 basis points. And the clerk's office moved a lot of money over into that bank because that's a safe investment, and in terms of full liquidity and in terms of relative yield, it's been very, very solid. So this is very important as well. You have a ton of upcoming maturities. You have about $108 million that comes due within the next 5 to 6 weeks. It all gets reinvested back at prevailing higher levels. That's a really good thing. Recent investments that I want to mention, and this is very rare, but in the history of my career, I don't think we've ever gone to a bank and asked the bank to break a CD and taken the penalty. You did have a CD that was, the one remaining CD that the clerk's office had purchased was at 50 basis points. It had 1 year to go. 50 basis points isn't a prevailing rate. The clerk's office went to the bank and broke the trade. Jenny Spencer asked the bank to be to reduce the fee that they were going to charge. The fee that they charged for breaking that was $49,000. It's a $20 million 1-year CD that I would guess will be reinvested back closer to 4.5%. That's $900,000. It's $850,000 additional dollars. So again, you don't typically break and take the penalties, but this is a very rare occasion, and it turned out to be a really good bet on that. Also, the clerk's office moved some funds that were at Truist that didn't want to pay a prevailing market rate into the bank that was willing to pay the 3.75, soon to be 4%. That was only $12 million, but the dollars on that are pretty significant. You add 100 basis points, 125 basis points, whatever it happens to be, it's real dollars. So we have a palm maturity that is maturing, and what we're asking only this time is to reinvest that back, $10 million there. And then I think that given the fact that the Fed meeting is next week, given the fact that a lot of folks expect that the market hasn't fully reflected the Fed, given the fact that I believe that we're going to see a fairly strong inflation number on the next CPI report, I think that the best thing to do is just reinvest the maturity. You have some fairly large expenses. You actually had some large expenses last month as well, including debt service. But we wait until your next meeting, which is 3 weeks from now, and at that point in time, go back out into what I think will be a good market to invest some of your bond proceeds, invest virtually all of these maturities, and I think that by the time we get to year-end, the portfolio is going to look very different, not only because of the movement that's happened, but also because we've stepped aside during some of the worst increases, and we're going to get a chance to put money to work at essentially 10 times what it was this time last year. So last year in December, I believe that your portfolio yield was somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 basis points. My guess is that we're going to end the year somewhere near 4%. Believe it or not, so that's a good thing. That's the market. That's not, it's primarily the market and positioning for the market. I'm not going to have you spend too much time on this. Thing I want to point out is that there on the right on portfolio statistics in September, at the end of your fiscal year, you're only at 177. There wasn't a whole lot that was fully liquid at that point in time. At the end of this month, because of not only your bond proceeds that came in, but also the staying pat, you're going to have a lot more liquid, a lot more maturing. That yield increased to what I believe is going to be 209, so roughly 32 basis points. Again, I think was simply market. We're going to see these more significant increases in November and December, but there again. And this is the benchmark comparison. You guys, the county is the red. These are all passive indexes that reflect the market. They don't represent someone who had actually invested. So obviously when the market moves up as steeply as it did, this is a time where the benchmark underperforms. So, and what I will ask for is a motion to implement the recommendations that I'm making here, which again, admittedly, are fairly lean based on the report submitted today, and recommend that the clerk implement the said board recommendations.
Discussions or questions from the board? Commissioner Herr?
Just an easy question. You mentioned the name of the bank that wouldn't raise the rate. What's the name of the bank that we are using that is raising the rate?
It's Synovus.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. All the banks are really, really liquid, and their capital positions are as strong as I've seen them in my career. So it's some of them, very few of them need money, but this particular bank feels like paying the prevailing overnight funds rate is a good source of funds for them. So we're comfortable with that.
Any other questions? Direction from the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? Before we call the question, we don't have any written requests. Anyone in the public that would like to speak to the board on this issue? Anyone in the public? Going to close public input. Public input's closed. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passed unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the presentation from the county broadband feasibility study update. Melanie Coots.
Thank you, Chairman. This morning, hopefully, we can get Courtney up here. I think this is the first time we're using Teams. For the record, there he is, Melanie Kuntz, Assistant County Manager. We were before you on August 23rd to provide you with an update, and at that time, you gave us some feedback. We went back and did some more research. Additionally, we allowed an open comment period to the residents, and it came out well, and I'm sure Courtney will touch on this, that we did find that we missed some people. So he has some updates on that, as well as the grant window that DEO is opening November 1st. So this is why we had to have it today. Courtney's a little under the weather, but he decided he could join us remotely. So go ahead, Courtney.
Courtney?
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Courtney Violette with Magellan Advisors. Nice to be back in front of you today. Thank you for allowing me to join remotely. We were in front of you in August with a presentation on our findings for this study, and we're going to review those findings, and as Melanie said, we're going to update you on the work we've done over the last 60 days, and then also talk a little bit about forward-looking opportunities, including the recent announcement from Department of Economic Opportunity of the state of Florida. So we are substantially complete with this project. We have submitted the final report to the county. Based on our last meeting in August, we did go back to the LTPT, which is the local technology planning team within Seminole County. As Melanie mentioned, we also opened up a request for comment period so that residents could provide feedback and let us know if we had missed anything related to the project. But we have delivered the final report, so the statement of work in front of you is for the most part complete. We are here, for the next month or so to assist with any, processes that the county may undertake and to assist Melanie and Frank in seeing this project forward. We want to remind everyone that the FCC currently today defines broadband as 25 megabits download, 3 megabits upload. There's also 3 definitions that we want to draw attention to. The first is unserved. An unserved household or a business or a resident is one who lacks access to at least 25 megabits down and 3 megabits up. Underserved are those residents or households that lack access to at least 100 megabits down and 20 megabits up. And if you have at least 100 megabits down and 20 megabits up, you are considered served, meaning you have broadband. I want to also point out here that the various types of bandwidth and systems and applications we utilize drive the necessary requirements for higher broadband speeds. I think we've seen that over the last few years as we have more devices and more applications coming to use within our households, right? Bandwidth needs to increase. And so the importance on making sure that everyone within Seminole County is served or has access to at least 100 megabits down by 20 megabits up was really the goal of this project, to identify those households that lack access. We did perform a survey earlier this year. This concluded in May. We had nearly 2,000 respondents. And as you can see from this infographic, about 72% of respondents subscribe to Spectrum services. That is a cable service, a hybrid fiber coax type of technology. And the median speeds through that survey were over 178 megabits download and 11 megabits upload. We do also note that using resources such as Broadband Now, that they state Seminole County is about 99.7% served, in that everyone, or 99.7% of residents or households have access to at least 100 megabits of service. So there's a very small segment of households that we believe are truly unserved. And you saw some of that data a few months ago. We're going to show you that again here in a few moments. Midway through the project, we began to identify potential project areas, or what we call PFSAs, potential funding service areas. And we had identified 11 potential areas or neighborhoods throughout Seminole County, which included tens of thousands of potential households. And then we went ahead and fielded these areas, which means we sent out staff to do car rideouts and to drive around these areas to validate whether or not these areas truly were unserved, or was there a different issue that we would uncover. Out of the 11 project areas, we did determine that 6 of those project areas have adequate infrastructure to provide at least 100 meg of service. 5 of the areas lacked broadband infrastructure, and we saw generally across Seminole County that there are areas that just have poorly maintained infrastructure. And we'll show you what that means here in just a moment. We did create project maps for each area. We also plotted unserved locations at the address level, so we know exactly which households were unserved. And then we also provided cost estimates to build infrastructure within these areas so that you could serve, or so that the residents could be served. When we talk about poorly maintained infrastructure, these are great examples of, pedestals that are in the right-of-way that may have been run over and not replaced. You may have poles being removed and cables that are hanging down, without proper ground clearance, or just stuff laying on the ground in the right-of-way, like you see on the picture on the far right. That far right picture is actually a fiber splice can, so that's where all the fibers and connections take place. And again, shouldn't just be sitting in the right-of-way. This should be down in the ground in a concrete box, or attached up on a pole. But for some reason, again, it's laying on the ground. We did work with county staff and county attorney's office to draft a letter to each and every provider in Seminole County. We also provided pictures and lat-long location information about where these were identified. And again, with hopes that the providers will get out there and get this stuff fixed. While this doesn't look great in the right-of-way, these types of issues can also cause service impacting or even reliability issues. So it is important they get this stuff fixed. After our fielding exercise, we were able to narrow down the project areas, and we were also able to eliminate a few of the project areas. And those 6 project areas that we identified are here. We identified 4 households in West Sanford, 7 households in Castleberry, 15 in East Sanford Midway area, 268 in Geneva North, and 571 in Geneva South, and finally 31 in Chuliota Pine area. We did have about 40 additional households added based on the request for comment period that Seminole had allowed for. As those comments came in, our staff again validated whether or not they were truly unserved, and in a few cases we did dispatch fielding teams to go validate those areas as well. So we added about another 40 households to the overall scope of the unserved areas. We then provided a cost estimate here in these middle 3 columns. Wireline cost estimate means wireline infrastructure, right? This is coax or fiber, something that is actual physical cable, if you will. We also provided a wireless estimate to provide a wireless service within these areas. And as you would expect, right, the wireless service is much less expensive than a wireline extension. In some of these cases where you have, 4 homes, 7 homes, 15 homes, like in these first 3 project areas, it almost seems like they were left out or they were forgotten. We think that the providers should be able to relatively easily extend service into these areas. Again, focusing on those that are just simply, off the main corridor, or maybe, the cable stopped before it got down to the last 4 households. So it seems more of an oversight, and, we'll work with the county to make sure the providers understand this issue, and hopefully we can get them to address it. As you can see, the larger set of households still are located in the Geneva area. 268 households in Geneva North, and 571 households in Geneva South. We also have the 31 that we identified within Chuliota. You can see from these overall cost estimates from a wireline perspective, we would estimate somewhere in the $16.5 million to almost $20 million to build out wireline connections to those 900 homes, or about $1.5 million, just over $1.5 million to deploy a wireless service. In some cases, like West Sanford, Castleberry, East Sanford, it makes no sense to deploy a wireless service within these areas when, again, there's a incumbent service provider that's just down the street and can easily extend service to these areas. As we all know, there's a significant amount of funding that's out there and available for broadband. ARPA over the last year has funded broadband projects across the country. There's also significant amounts of money within the BEAD, within the Infrastructure Act. to the tune of about $1.2 trillion. And there is a bucket of funding right now that is working its way through the federal government, and it's the BEAD program, Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program. This equates to about $42.5 billion that will make its way down to the states, and then the states will ultimately be responsible for distributing those funds into the counties and to connect unserved and then underserved locations. This money will be distributed to the states on a pro rata basis, meaning the states that have more verified unserved and underserved households will get more of the money. So, we've been working with many of our clients across the state, many counties that we work with, to make sure the state of Florida has a true on-the-ground record of households that are truly unserved, and that we're not just depending on the service providers and the service provider data to tell whether an area is served or not. As Melanie did mention, just last week, the Department of Economic Opportunity here in the state of Florida did announce an upcoming grant that will be made available here starting November 1st. They will be distributing approximately $400 million to fund infrastructure projects to actually deploy wireline, wireless services to areas where you have, verified unserved populations. That $400 million, the window will open November 1st for grant applications. It's a 30-day application window, and there's a number of constraints around the grant program itself. First and foremost, there is a $5 million maximum award per application, and so with a 50% required match. That means that a maximum project could be $10 million on an application. $10 million, 50% match, right? The applicant puts up $5 million, they can be granted up to $5 million. There's also some constraints around the types of agencies that can apply. While it is open to all types of applicants, including private companies, local governments, educational groups, and so forth, there are some constraints around awarding money to local government directly or indirectly, and that you would have to ensure that the area truly is unserved and that there are no providers that are willing to expand into that area. Seems a strange constraint, if you will. I mean, that's what this whole process is to really truly identify those unserved areas. But there are constraints in the state of Florida in regards to local governments deploying broadband, and so I think that constraint within the grant follows state statute, which does not allow local governments, that's cities, counties, to get into the broadband business unless they follow a fairly regimented process. But again, just to reiterate, that money opens November 1st. The deadline for applications is December 1st. Maximum project size $10 million with a 50% local match. As we had said back in April, the action plan that we identified with county staff was to immediately make any funding that the county may have available to last mile providers so that last mile providers can begin to build out infrastructure and serve these areas that are unserved. There's a decision that would need to be made as to whether the county would use a competitive bid process or develop a grant program and open up a grant application process. We did provide a few examples of other programs for other counties to county staff. And again, there's really two timelines we're operating under here. First timeline is the ability for the county to execute and develop that grant program. That can take several months, as we know. And then also there is some constraints around the ARPA funds that you have and when those funds need to be obligated, which is the end of 2024 next year, or I'm sorry, in 2 years, and then the deadline to actually spend the funding, the end of 2026. The next steps, we do recommend that leadership review the project areas we identified and confirm our findings. Commissioners, we did go back, as I mentioned, to the LTPT for additional input into the findings. What we found was the LTPT group, and primarily the providers that are part of that group, didn't have a whole lot of feedback. We provided the project maps, We provided an Excel spreadsheet with every address that we felt is unserved for them to validate. And what we generally heard over the last 2 weeks was that they weren't able to make a whole lot of progress due to the hurricane, and that a lot of their leadership and their crews are out, right, restoring services in portions and areas of Florida. So again, fairly silent from the LTPT team and the providers. We were hoping for some additional feedback, but we did not receive any. As we did mention, we added about 40 homes to the project based on the citizens' request for comments. So we appreciated that ability to seek additional feedback from your constituents. We do recommend that the county determine the most appropriate method to distribute any funding that it may dedicate to broadband here as expeditiously as possible. It's probably, there's not enough time at this point to be able to make decisions as it relates to the DEO opportunity that opens November 1st, but DEO will have another round of funding coming down to it from the infrastructure bill, primarily the BEAD program, which is the $42.5 billion. DEO will be responsible for distributing that next year once the state of Florida receives those funds. So this DEO opportunity that opens November 1st is really the first of what we think will be a few windows for last mile infrastructure funds, and that the county should be ready, into 2023 to take advantage of any opportunities they put forward. And then we do continue to recommend that the county and its partners continue to push the Affordable Connectivity Program, which is a subsidy for low-income households that can provide immediate relief in both a reduction in the monthly recurring costs for internet services, as well as providing a stipend for new devices on an annual basis. With that, we're here for any questions or comments you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Commissioner Lockhart.
Yeah, I just thank you for the presentation very much. This is a great opportunity for so many folks in our community. Can I get clarification from you on the last mile program? Which of the areas you've identified, is it priorities 5, 1, and 6 that are considered the last mile?
All of those project areas, we believe, based on the data that we've provided, are in fact unserved. So all of those would be eligible for infrastructure money to build out last mile.
So all 6, are you saying all 6 of the areas are last mile eligible?
We're saying all 6 of the areas have unserved households based on our data and would be eligible for last mile funds. We based our prioritization, Magellan's prioritization, on connecting the most amount of households for the least cost. And so that's where the priority 1 through 6 come,
right,
based on the actual amount of distance and the actual cost for each area. That's obviously not your priorities. The county's priorities could be very different from ours based on cost analysis.
Okay.
Any other comments? Questions that I have is that, and I understand your priorities about the household numbers and financial aspect of the infrastructure, 1 through 6. And I'm seeing here that there are some areas in your presentation that you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, from what I'm hearing, West Sanford, Castleberry, East Sanford, and the Chiliota area. Those are the areas that we could and should be talking to the providers about, looking at those areas to see which areas have been forgotten and how to provide those services to those areas by expanding their own infrastructure. Is that what I heard?
That's right. The smaller areas where there's 4 homes, 5 homes, 15 homes, Commissioner DeLaurie, it seems like they were forgotten, or for some reason the line just didn't make it down the road.
Okay.
So, those seem like easy fixes from the provider's perspective, if they have willingness to participate.
I just want to make sure I understood that correctly, so thank you for confirming that. I also think that with the money we have, I think this is a great tool. As the consultant, from what I've heard, says there'll be other money coming down from DOE that we should allow these providers apply for that money and do their cost share prospectively, and asking our staff what is the best way, because there's a lot of needs for ARPA funds. What is the best way to use those ARPA funds countywide so that we can use those dollars expeditiously through the time span that we have and allow the providers to apply for the money that's coming down from the state and the feds. That would be what I think the conversation should be. Commissioner Lockhart?
Well, then, I'd love to get clarification again from you, if I could, about your recommendation, because the consultant's recommendation is for us to immediately make ARPA funds available to the last mile. The DEO grants are obviously fantastic, and they're out there, but I'd like to get clarification, if we could, from you. And I'm sorry, your face isn't up there, so I feel like I'm talking, I just want to make sure you're really still there.
I'm here.
You're there.
I'm not
Okay,
sure why
fabulous.
it's not showing.
Talking to a blue screen. So can you, because I think Commissioner Delary just expressed one recommendation, and then what I'm reading in your report is something different.
Yeah, I think, Commissioner Delary and I had a chance to chat a little bit last week, and the question is, I think, whether or not the Seminole County ARPA funds should go to private providers to extend their infrastructure, or, right, should they apply a loan to DEO for funding and, provide their own match? Now, that may be possible for, some of your larger incumbents, if they have an interest in expanding, for instance, into Geneva. But there may not be providers that have, right, capital funding that can commit 50% match to go attain state funding. And so what we've seen in some other cases is, counties using their local match funding to make that an opportunity when it's needed. We don't know if, Spectrum or Lumen or AT&T are going to apply to fund build-outs in Geneva. We don't know that right now. Right, we'll know that in a few months after this first wave of applications go in, but we don't know that today. I think the point is there a better use of those funds elsewhere, or should the county somehow use those funds to support broadband expansion? So I think that's the main question, Commissioner.
Commissioner Zimbauer.
For me, the way I see this is, I agree, the current providers, when we are in a situation where you have 4 or 7 or 15, I mean, that's a conversation we need to have with those carriers that are in that area. If they're having trouble for whatever reason, whether it's right away, whether it's something that prevents them or inhibits them from finishing out that small of an area, I think that's a one-on-one conversation for those providers. And if something the county can do to assist with right-of-way or easements or whatever the case might be, then we should certainly do that. Obviously, my district is the one most unserved as well as underserved. So I would like to know, from a deployment and time standpoint, my vision of having some of these providers that would decide maybe they want to do this and maybe they want to apply. When you hardwire in areas such as the rural area, that's a lot of line miles between homes. And my expectation is I don't think they're going to be too interested in doing that, because quite frankly, if they were, they would have already done it. So I think we need to really be looking at a wireless model and deployment, at least for the near future in those areas for the rural area. It makes no sense to run, I don't know what it would be, 500 miles of cable or fiber optic to serve, 500 homes.
You make a very good point. That's why they're unserved today, right? The business case has not been there.
That's right.
A wireless deployment would be the fastest, least expensive option. It would also give, as we understand the makeup of the population out there, Commissioner Zimbauer, it would also give those that want service the ability to take service, and those that don't want it on their property or passing in front of their property, right, the ability to not take service.
We certainly have folks out there that want no interaction with the outside world. There's no question about that. And some of them have voiced their opinions of broadband coming in to be a problem. So Agreed. If it's over the air, then it's not touching properties and right-of-ways and so forth. So, no, good point.
Commissioner Hur?
So I might need a refresher from Melanie or Tricia on this, but I thought we had a commitment within the ARPA funding mechanism to at least investigate this or spend money on it. And so now I'm hearing just a little bit of a different perspective on that. And so could you refresh everyone's memory with regard to the math?
There was money associated with broadband.
And what is that number?
I thought it was $4 million. We've used a little bit of it for the consultant.
Right. And so if we look at this, the real question is, do we want to spend $1.5 million of the ARPA commitment on wireless connection for 896 homes, which brings it to an investment of $1,700 per household? Isn't that the question?
Yes.
Okay. And so the consultant's suggestion is that we move forward with ARPA. I may be reading into your suggestion here, is that you would move forward with all of it, because you didn't delineate out, and you're saying that all are eligible. So the question is, where do we want to do this? And I certainly do appreciate the fact that you have a district that may not want this, and so that's different. But
Not all of them.
not all of them, and possibly not the people they try to sell their homes to later. So from my perspective, I would like to see us move forward, at least in the districts that are close. I don't see that us leveraging a commercial entity to connect 4 or 7 or 15 or 31 houses is going to happen, because they would have to do it in the wireline mechanism. So that's a whole different cost structure, 3 to sometimes 5 times the cost. And there's no guarantee that those folks are going to sign up for the service. So we can spin our wheels doing that, but it's probably not going to get people connected. I'd kind of like to go back to the old commitment. I would tell you that for the areas that fall into my district, I think we move forward with ARPA funds to get connectivity. We have kids living in those households that can't do schoolwork. They're sitting in front of the 7-Eleven to do it.
Commissioner Lockhart?
So is there an opportunity to split the implementation? Would there be rationale to do West Sanford, Castleberry, Winter Springs, and East Sanford Midway and perhaps Chiliota in one of the wired solutions, and do Geneva North and South in wireless? Or does that make things too confusing?
No, of course you can. I'm going to answer
Okay.
for Courtney.
Okay.
And I would think what we'd do first off is, as you mentioned, we'd reach out to, like, if Spectrum is, I believe Spectrum is in the West Sanford, we would reach out to them and see if we could work with them to see if they could do it at no cost. If they couldn't, potentially, maybe we could work a partnership where we could put a little money towards it, and then they could do the wired solution for all 4 of those. And then do the wireless, but if you were interested, for the 2 areas in Geneva, the wireless.
I think we need to get moving.
Commissioner, before we move on, I agree with what you're saying, is that when we first brought this up, we talked about the access to the internet for the individuals that can't afford it. That's what we talked about. This here is,
I disagree with that.
okay, all right. So, because this is only providing services to the house for the underserved, not the financially underserved. This is just underserved.
Under or on.
For the hardwire or the infrastructure, not the financial aspect of it. That's what this is. This is non-financial aspect of it. This is just the underserved infrastructure. That's what this is.
It's unserved, not underserved.
Unserved. Yeah, that's what I
They
said.
have no access at all.
They have no access at all.
Correct.
This is not for individuals that can't afford it. This is for individuals that don't have the infrastructure for those areas. That's what this is for.
I appreciate you explaining that to me, but I believe when we did ARPA, we never contemplated that we were going to fund somebody's monthly bill.
I didn't say that.
That dollar amount wouldn't do that, nor does ARPA go into perpetuity. It was around creating connectivity for people that had no ability to connect, and the analysis to understand exactly what that gap is in our community. So now we know the gap. We had pledged a certain amount of money, which the wireless version of this is coming in well under the commitment. And so, the path that we set on with the expense that we've already incurred with regard to the study that we've now done would indicate to me that we need to get moving. And again, respect to the district that may not want it, but we need to at least get moving in the areas where we know we have issues. I would like to ask a question with regard to the wireless. If we're doing wireless, who maintains that? What is the infrastructure go-forward expense with that for the county? I'd like to presume it's zero.
So I think what we're recommending is that the county open up a grant window, right, where providers could make application to serve these areas and could put forth their own solution, right, and they would maintain it, they would operate it, they would serve the customers, and that would be the end of it, right, a one-time capital investment, if you will. And allow the provider who, wins the grant, if you will, to then assume operations and maintenance going forward. So I think we've always seen this as a one-time investment on the capital infrastructure side. And again, you would have to look to your providers through an open, competitive, or grant solicitation process to determine who's going to be the provider, what they're going to provide for each of those areas.
So I appreciate you getting that on the record. With that, I would be willing to move forward with a grant application process to be built for providers to come in and do it, as you indicated, Commissioner Lockhart, with flexibility around what is the best solution, not to exceed the maximum that's already been allocated through the ARPA funding for this program.
Is that a motion? Second.
Yes.
A motion second on the floor. Discussion. Commissioner Zimbauer.
So I would absolutely support that 100%. I concur. I would like to caution us, before we go too far down the road, is to really truly identify the West Sanford, the Castleberry Winter Springs area, as well as the East Sanford Midway, and understand really what the 4, 7, and 15 is. I see no benefit in deploying wireless if the local providers are willing to step up. And if we need to assist, again, with right-of-way access, reach out to those individuals to find out if they're not giving, access or right-of-way, let's try to get it done. But I concur. My expectation, quite honestly, is this would have been happening long before now, based on our original conversations of the ARPA monies and what I thought our instruction and direction to staff was as far as what we'd be moving forward on. We're here, with our consultant. So I absolutely support, let's get this grant program open, let's get it moving. Let's try to get a timeline of understanding what it's going to take to reach out to these existing providers on the 4, 7, and 15. In my district, absolutely over the air is going to be beneficial. Again, they can take it or not take it. I would suspect 80% probably will, the other 20% won't. But if it's there, it's future property owners, like Commissioner Herr indicated, that, and a lot of people don't move to the rural area because there is no connectivity. They can't run their home-based businesses, their children can't interact, or maybe they're doing a college course or what have you. So I'll be supporting that motion, but let's move forward.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Constantine?
Well, I think we all recognized from the pandemic that having access to broadband is extremely important to all citizens, and therefore I concur with the motion, and without spending any more time in it, I think we need to move forward, and let's do it now.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you. We hope you feel better.
Thank you, Commissioners. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, we're now going to move on. Does anyone need to take a break? Okay. We're going to move on to the consent agenda.
Anyone mind if I turn the air conditioning a little warmer?
It's fine.
Okay. Anyone else freezing?
Pursuant to Florida law, the public has the right to be heard on propositions except for the Board of County Commissioners acting on the ministerial emergency matters or conducting a meeting exempt from Section 286.011 Florida statute. The public comment time for propositions shall be 3 minutes for individuals, 6 minutes for group representation. The right to be heard during quasi-judicial hearings is governed by Florida law. The public will be provided the opportunity to be heard on non-agenda items at the end of the meeting. At this time, we'll move to consent agenda. I'd like to ask County Manager, anything you might make changes to?
No, sir. You already took care of item 30, which was the Mobility Week proclamation, and just also announced, although it's not consent agenda, that item 29, the Yarborough Comp Plan text amendment, has been withdrawn by the applicant.
Okay. So we're prepared to move for the consent agenda as presented. Okay. Any questions or items that want to be pulled? Commissioner Herr.
I'd like to pull item 6 for discussion.
6, got it. Anything else? I'd like to pull item number 20 for discussion. Any other items? Direction for the board.
Move to approve 7 through 19, 21 through 25, 26 and 27, which is the county attorneys and the clerks.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, before we move on, is there any written request to speak to the board? Anyone in the audience that'd like to speak to the board on the consent agenda items? Anyone in the audience? Going to close public input. Public input is now closed. Motion on the floor is stand. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Move on to item number 6 first. Commissioner Herr?
Yes, so during briefing, I did ask several questions, and I do think it's important that we establish the answers to these publicly. When this project was established, if you'll recall, I was asked to serve on the Seminole Action Board, so I have fairly deep knowledge of it. And when Worley Park was brought to the table, the notion of creating an endowment that would be seeded by Wendover was discussed many, many, many times. And it was my impression that there was a commitment to create an endowment that would fund Step Up on an ongoing basis. So the question that I asked when this first came to the table and the folks came to my office was, could you please update me on what's in the endowment and how much was seeded? And I don't have those answers to that question. And what fundraising efforts have taken place since then. So I would like to understand it.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'm Steve Fussell, Chief Administrator of the Office of Organizational Excellence, and I have with me Ryan von Weller, who is with Wendover Housing Partners, and also Paula Cook-Freeman, Program Manager with Step Up at Worley Park. And so, you want to address the question?
Of course.
Thanks.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Herr, you want to ask the questions one at a time, or how would you like me to address you, or address the options?
You can just go for it.
Ryan, you need to put your name and address on.
Sure. Ryan Von Weller, 1105 Kensington Park Drive, Altamont Springs, Florida, Suite 200. So as I did reply back at the request of the Commission prior to the meeting, we do have an endowment that is managed by the Central Florida Foundation. In addition to that, the ongoing operations of Step Up have been privately paid for by our CEO, Jonathan Wolf, to this point. I think, as we all know, we opened up into the pandemic, and the intention of the endowment was never to be spent. It was to raise the money and then take the offshoot of the endowment management annually to help pay for operations. Under the conditions that we opened into and the way the world operated for the better part of a year and a half or 2 years, we have been seeding the foundation. We've got multiple contributions from area organizations. Step Up, the national organization based out of California, is beginning to assist us, and we've hired alongside of them to have a professional fundraiser under their umbrella to help further seed the endowment as well with the Central Florida Foundation. So That effort is ongoing. We have to get several $1 million in there to reach the objective of being able to pay for the operations from the disbursements annually. So in the interim, we have been raising money, as I mentioned. We have been privately funding it ourselves to this point. And I believe your third question was regarding ARPA funding and Step Up at Worley Park. To my knowledge and our organization's knowledge, has not received any additional ARPA funds for operations either.
So I didn't hear any amounts in there. So how much is in the endowment?
I don't know how much exactly is in the endowment. It is over 6 figures. I don't know the exact amount of that currently.
And you say you sent a response to this? Because I'm not seeing one. I was briefed on Friday, asked the questions on Friday, and I do not see a response.
You should have it in your emails.
Okay. And is there an amount in there?
No.
No.
And why don't we know that?
I believe we previously provided the overall annual budget, and several times we've given
The
information.
budget for expenses, but not
That's
the
right.
budget for the endowment.
That's right. Yeah, I don't have that with me this morning.
Commissioner, I may help. If you feel that we need additional information, then we can ask for a continuance. Commissioner Lockhart?
I appreciate that that's on the table, and that might be where we wind up. This discussion about funding the endowment and the cooperative relationship with Worley Park and Wendover started long before the pandemic. When I was chairman of the school board was when we first started conversations about Worley Park, and I actually had the opportunity to meet with the CEO of Step Up on Second because I had concerns about how an organization from California was going to be the one that was going to provide the wraparound services that are so desperately needed for those citizens living at Worley Park. And I was told that those would all be funded by this endowment, and that was 6 years ago that started. So I understand the last couple of years we've had pandemic challenges, but certainly there's been ample opportunity prior to the pandemic to get this ramped up. I am in a split predicament at this point because my heart is for the people who are there who need the support. My heart is not with the service provider. And there have been multiple commitments made, and I'm not sure that I am comfortable. The only thing that gives me comfort about this is that it was on a reimbursement basis. And so I guess I would ask our team, who is going to be managing this contract and confirming that those services are actually being provided by these specific salaried positions?
That reporting goes up through our grants administrator, George Woodring.
But how would George, and George is a great guy managing a grant, but how does George know that the individual whose salary we're paying is actually delivering the service at Worley Park? Who's managing and overseeing the actual service delivery?
Yeah, the contract is specifically for the, George actually just handles receipts, to your point. Yeah, and then performance management there's no plan currently for that performance management.
That, for me, will need to be in place before I can support it.
Okay.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
I appreciate all things that have been said thus far. I was actually at the groundbreaking on Worley Park. If I recall, that was in sometime in 2018, late 2018, early 2019. So albeit there was a lot of controversy, City of Sanford being involved many years ago, and finally getting the groundbreaking going forward. They've done great work. We did have a pandemic that we all know in 2020. A lot of people have been trying to find their legs and get back up. I don't necessarily have a need or desire to have an oversight on their everyday operation or manage what their daily operations and what monies are going to be used for what. I do think there needs to be some accountability as to what those monies are utilized for. And so I'd like to hear from staff, is there an example as to what Commissioner Lockhart is suggesting that we're currently doing with other entities, that we have somebody that is checking up on going into these companies and ensuring that Joe Smith is doing X from X amount of hours and that money's being spent appropriately? How are we doing that?
Good morning, Commissioners. Carrie Longsworth, Community Assistance Division Manager. For most of the ARPA programs, we are not doing that. We are doing that, though, with the Rescue Outreach Mission, who we're fully funding with ARPA. So what's currently happening is we have staff in our office that they submit all of their receipts to, who actually verifies them, and then they go to Resource Management for, ARPA eligibility and payment. So it's a double check system. So we could absolutely implement a similar process for Worley Park.
So on that note, so are you telling me that all the other ARPA arrangements that we've done in similar situations, the only one that we're doing anything like is being discussed right now is with ROM?
That is correct.
And how many others are we currently funding under the ARPA that we're not doing a direct oversight on?
For the larger ARPA awards, we did Recovery House, Lifeboat Project, the Homeless Services Network, and the Boys and Girls Club.
Right. So my question to, I guess, the county attorney and the interim manager, who was the county attorney at the time, I know there's been a great deal of concern that how this ARPA money is being utilized, how it is verified, so that we and the taxpayers aren't on the hook for these monies. Can you speak a little bit to, do you all have a concern of what's being discussed versus maybe doing something different? Is there a better program or way? Or we've heard that we've got 5 or 6 ARPA recipients. We're doing only one with ROM with direct oversight. Those others out there, and I know because I've heard from a lot of these 501 and nonprofits that our legal department has been pretty on the point of making sure things are done right. So I want to understand, is there something we're going to run at risk here if we continue on with what's been proposed for today's agenda?
Well, I'll let you go with the contract first.
Okay. By the terms of the contract that you have before you, under Section 7 is the county's responsibilities. And it's pretty clear. The county will review the detailed documentation and detailed receipts provided by the subrecipient during the term as part of the subrecipient's reimbursement request in accordance with the agreement. If approved, the county will reimburse the subrecipient for expenditures incurred in accordance with the agreement. In the event review identifies ineligible expenses, subrecipient's expenditures will not be eligible for reimbursement. So there is county oversight and control. It is a reimbursement form of agreement, not a true grant, go out and go forth and spend.
Sure.
It's reimbursement.
And when I read some of the other, this is the same contractual arrangement we have with others. I've not seen any difference. Is that fair?
That's fair. And I will say that the double check system, I'm very comfortable with. The legal department, Brajesh in particular, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I am very confident that any federal or state agency would come in to audit what we've done. We will pass with flying colors. I mean, I don't know if we would have enough staff countywide to start diving into every organization and getting in and being there when they're purchasing something, but I think the verification of the receipts between staff and resource management is a good system for what we're dealing with. So I'm very confident and things are being done appropriately and protects the county. And
sure.
I can tell you that there have been many times that the county attorney's office, at the request of staff, has said, no, that's not an eligible expense, no, that's not an eligible program. So, it's not, there's always that
sure.
two-way street.
Commissioner Herr?
Thank you.
As the board member for ROM, I can tell you that not all of these deals are treated equally, and this one probably would be treated the same way ROM would be treated, and that would be the solution to this. I have no doubt that you have local staff providing the services because you have outstanding results, and I am supportive of the organization and supportive of the mission. What we just heard, I want to point out, was that the CEO is funding this himself. So what we are about to do is provide a grant that takes the CEO's funding, and I believe you used the word personal funding, which clearly is after the P&L that supports that, and put money to it, federal through local, and our decision. And I simply cannot support that. I support the mission. I supported raising funds for the endowment, would continue to support. I mean, you want me to go sing in the town square and somebody raise money? I'll do it. I'll do it. It's not about that, but it's about the mechanism that we're using here, and what it is alleviating is, it just doesn't pass the snuff test.
If I may, we're providing an extraordinary amount of services and housing, 81 units, 41 individuals, 40 families. We have children in this development that have advanced well beyond what they were before they got there. Paula, who's with me, will address you guys in a moment here to kind of give you a better flavor of the outstanding results that we're doing. We're providing a service for the county. Whether you view it that way or not, I understand. Everyone's perspective may be a little bit different. But we are not only providing services for the folks that live at Worley Park. We have an outreach team of residents that are ex-veterans that have gone out into the community and have assisted currently homeless individuals and families with finding the help that they so desperately need. This is not an isolated, we're not operating in a vacuum here. We're providing a significant amount of resources and talent and a bunch of other, tangible assets to Seminole County. And each time I come up here, I just feel like we're kind of outcast a little bit here. We don't come here, I don't believe we've received any money from the county to this point for operations. Our understanding is these monies from ARPA are for an allowable use of homelessness resources and permanent supportive housing, and that's what we're here for. So with that, if you don't mind, like Paula, who operates and manages Step Up for us on behalf of Worley Park, on behalf of Step Up, to give you guys a little bit more understanding about the programming she runs there, the full-time staff that are there, and kind of what goes on a daily basis. If you don't mind, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Before you go there, I'd just like to say, Ryan, that I certainly don't whatever I'm doing to impart that bad feeling is just simply not what's in my heart. It's around being a good steward to public funds.
Fair enough.
It's
Understood.
around that.
Can I ask one more question?
Go
Well,
ahead,
Mr.
Commissioner
Von
Lockhart.
Weller, is there any reason why you would object to having your contract be treated the same way as Rescue Outreach Mission?
No, we understand. We're billed
It was
from...
a yes or no.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just so you a little bit of clarity, we're billed from Step Up for the hours that they provide to us, right? So we have a very clear ledger. It's very cut and dry in how it's laid out. So, and Paula can give you, she said, if you don't mind, just for a couple of minutes, who's there full-time and what she's
Yes or
doing.
no
That's
was great. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. This being Mobility Week, I guess I'm definitely someone today. I woke up, my knees didn't. We started...
Excuse me, before you start, can you give us your name and...
Oh, sure. Paula Cook Freeman. I'm a clinical social worker and the program manager at Worley Park.
Good, thank you.
I started, they opened their doors on 5/13 of 2020. And that was in the midst of the pandemic. Just a little bit of a synopsis of the work that we've done there. Normally, when you work with housing services, there's a street outreach component, and then, you steer people into housing, and they get to know your staff. They're comfortable with you. On this case, the first time we met everybody is basically when they're moving in. And at that time, a lot of their community service people were not coming out. I've made beds, we've moved them in, tried to make them feel welcome. And the biggest part of this was to establish a sense of community, which in a pandemic was very difficult. So how do you engage? People are not comfortable with social workers down the hall. because, you know, there's this thing, oh, you know, we don't want you to come in, I don't want you to see what's going on in my house. So it was all about engagement, and I have to give credit. The first people I reached out to was Seminole County Department of Health, because it was important for us in the pandemic. They gave us masks. We set up a walking program so that we'll get to know each other outside in the atmosphere that's socially distanced. They give us signs, and we started a community garden. We tried to do things like that were outdoors to build that sense of community. Over the years, we've added different components. We have, when the children were doing online schooling, and there was some regression, we partnered with Bentley Education Services, so they came in for a homework help. We started a GD program most recently with them as well. We did the first Friendsgiving. You know, Worley has expansive grounds, so we had a little bistro setting. The Girl Scouts helped to provide a Thanksgiving dinner. We're now about to do our 3rd annual, because there's some people who have not had a family-style Thanksgiving dinner in over 30 years. And that's important. And building that sense of community with different things, art programs and so on, has been very important. People are trusting us now. You know, it takes a while to build that engagement, and so many different partnerships with the Sharing Center, with Seminole County Public Schools FINS program. So I've reached out into the community to bring people in. And I think for the most part, we have our veterans, we have a great partnership with the VA, you know, and all of these different components. It's all about building community, building community, building community. Our street outreach team has been a very, very important part, and we're doing that funding through Homeless Services Network. With the hurricane, they were about to go out, they've canvassed, they've delivered Narcan, they have taken blankets for cold nights and all these different things. So in the community, Step Up is trying to provide our services more than just at Worley Park, like Ryan said. And we think that we're doing a very good job in the services that we're providing. I invite you to stop by at any time to see our work there. And we've had some really good successes. We've partnered with Second Chance University. One of our veterans completed their program for HVAC. I went to his graduation ceremony. He was so surprised and emotional that somebody showed up at graduation, because I thought it was very important to mark that accomplishment. So he graduated on Friday and had a job on Monday. So we did the whole cake and balloons. Now this is, for us, something that's so ordinary, but he had never had that. You know, so that I try to put the personal touches and celebrate achievements. For the children, we had their little acknowledgement, people who moved their grades from a C through the Bentley Education Services. We had one girl from C to A, so we made a big deal about that. You know, so these are just the little things that we're trying to do. And most of these initiatives are funded or supported through my relationships with community partners. You know, because those are the little parts with Ryan and the endowment that's different from what I'm doing. But, you know, that's a synopsis of life at Worley. If you have any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Commissioner Lockhart?
How many of your current residents qualify under the definition of permanent supportive housing?
We have 10.
You have 10.
10. That's a contract with Homeless Services Network, and they are managed by a case manager specifically for them. So their rent and utilities are, you know, paid. They do 30% if they have income on the sliding scale. Everybody else engages with us for services on a voluntary manner because it's person-centered care.
Right.
So that's why the engagement
So the-
component is so important.
So the balance of your residents that do not qualify under the definition of permanent supportive housing are how many?
Well, we have 81 units, one of which it's the courtesy officer. So apart from the 10, so we're looking at about 71 households.
Okay.
Any other questions? Direction from the board.
Move approval of item 6.
Second.
We have motion second. Discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pose like sign.
No.
Motion passes 3-2.
As a follow-up, I still would like my questions answered. I'm sure that Mark Brewer can provide the data in terms of what's in the endowment, and I can either go there, or if you could send it to me, Ryan, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. I concur with Commissioner Herr that it should be done. I think that I got all the assurances I needed from the county manager and the county attorney on this as far as the contract, but I do think that it would be important, since it was something that has been asked for, that we make sure that all of us get it.
Commissioner Zimbat and Commissioner Lockhart.
I concur 100% and agree with that, as much information we get. I would also just remind everyone that although ROM was the example that was put forth, we have to remember this county jumped into ROM long before the pandemic ever hit and before ARPA funds were ever allocated to that. And I don't have a problem, and Commissioner Hirsch sits on that board, I don't have a problem if you're suggesting that maybe we need to take another look at the ROM on how it's contracted and being looked at, because I do understand there's been some struggles with being able to get some things done in a timely fashion because of certain oversights, or has to go through multiple hoops to get there. So I'm happy to have that conversation. But ROM, no question, was long before the COVID hit, and that's been amended and changed multiple times. So if our commissioner who sits on that board's recommendation is we might want to relook at that, I have no problem with that at all.
Commissioner Lockhart?
Yeah, I think the higher intensity and the desire on my part to have more of a magnifying glass on this particular contract is that you have an entity that has been asked to be transparent in certain ways and willfully and knowingly came to this meeting without the information that they had been asked for. And the lack of candor and transparency is just a little concerning, and we do have a history with this organization. And so I think in light of that, I'll just go on the record, that's why I would like there to be more of an oversight role, like we have with another organization that has struggled in the past, with which we've acknowledged. And so until that trust is there, I think additional scrutiny is warranted, and that's why I voted against the item.
Okay. Any other comments before we move on? Okay, move on. Next item that was asked to pull was item number 20. That was mine. In looking at this, I still need additional information. Basically, in reading the packet, it's to waive the single source purchasing requirements and to allow for the purchasing of a centralized UPS system of $294,616. This is in the new building that we're building over at 5 Points in the annex. I did ask for what is the credit of the existing system that was designed, and it's a credit of $20,000. And I know you don't probably get dollar for dollar, but this is not just a request for sole source. This is a major change order, and the question that I have is, I'm trying to understand why the change order is needed, because it's almost 14 times what the original price was that we agreed to in the original building, and I'd like to have additional information to understand why the system needs to be upgraded to this level that is not included in the original base price of the building that we haven't even occupied yet, that's still under construction. And I know we have miscellaneous contingency funds, but this is not how you spend miscellaneous contingency funds on change orders of this size without understanding why we're expanding a system 14 times than the original design of the building when we haven't even taken it over yet. And I'm hoping that either someone can answer these questions, or I'd like to ask the board to continue this so we can get the information.
Good morning. John Judge, Public Works Director. When the base of design and also the design of the building was included is individual silver. For every floor has a silver. And the UPS only protects the silver, does not protect the entire every outlet. During the design and working with the stakeholder, it was suggested or requested by the IT for the clerk and also the IT for the sheriff. They want to be able to protect some other the outlet throughout the building. And the stakeholder, along with our consulting and our staff, they review it, and also we included the emergency management, Alan Harris Group, and all that came to the support of that changes. And that will provide, it is central UPS will protect what the stakeholder requested, and the reason that you see it in front of you because the emergency management requested to have the current consultant, which they maintain the system throughout the county, to install it, to purchase it and install it, and also it'll save you about $60,000 or so if it went that route. That all the stakeholders review it, and that's what we are. Throughout the contract, there are a lot of changes in those buildings. Some of them small, some of them larger. We had to change the layout of the floor. We had to change and we added some on the parking lot. However, the contract for that project is $65 million the award. And also we have in the budget what I call it contingency, in case changes and unforeseen or changes throughout. And we talked to PMA. He represents the owner, the consultant. He been reviewing it. And the overall change order, even with all those, everything is going up and up. We're going to be, when we finish that project, we will be under that budget. We'll be around probably between 3.5% to 4% above the main contract. That's where we are. I'll answer any question you have. If you need any more information, and the credit, I was able to get it, finally push it to see what kind of credit for what we get for those individual and the contact, about $20,000. I emailed it this morning to you and everybody. I'll be glad to answer any question.
Well, John, in the book, it basically, in the agenda item, it says sole source. This is more than a sole source. This is a sole source plus a change order.
No, the change order commission does not come to the board because it's under that. This is the change, the item from the emergency management to be able to utilize their consultant, which they maintain the system throughout the county. That's what that item is not a change order, because the change order is done on a county staff level and review by PMA and approved by staff and the purchasing. The only time it'll come if we exceed the budget. We're not exceeding the budget.
Well, John, then I'll rephrase the statement this way. To do scope creep of 14 times the original intent of design is not what I believe is the correct way to spend miscellaneous money. Okay, that's just my opinion.
I
And we all
understand.
have the right to have our own opinion.
Absolutely.
So
and I
because of that
understand.
scope creep,
I understand.
I believe that people should be looking at the original design and be paying attention to what they're designing. That's why we budgeted out. That was what we bought.
I understand, and the commissioners, the design, when we did the basic design, all stakeholders were involved. They had input on all the design and everything. That's requested by the party I described during the detailed design and now. And
Because I can also see in the future additional scope creep, and that's the reason why I can't support this, and I wanted to bring this to the board so that they can make their own decision, and if they need information, fine. If not, then they need to give direction, because I cannot support a scope creep of 14 times.
and may tell me what information you need.
Commissioner Hur?
I think there's two dynamics that I agree with you on the scope creep, and I don't want to put my stake in the sand on scope creep and then have something that we build not be right. So it's $296,000. I'm willing to move forward with the item. The one thing I would ask, though, is that I do think, to your point, Chairman Delary, we should be tracking the scope creep. So if that doesn't exist today, we need to create the document with regard to this project that says, this was the ask, this is where the ask came from, this was the additional cost, and did we go yay or nay? We probably need to start putting that down, just because I think, I'll use this is a gigantic version of remodeling the kitchen that starts out with a $25,000 budget, and the next thing you know, you have a kitchen that's worth more than your house. So I get it. But the way to keep track of that, at least in the Her household, is that somebody pulls out that document and says, hey, this is what this is happening. So I think that might be a solution here. But I move to approve.
We track all the change order stuff like that. You don't see it because they're not, but we'll be glad to provide a quarterly or whatever information you need. And all those changes, they've been embedded and approved by our consultant, which represent the county PMA.
Right, and we should track them by requester. Not that the requests aren't legitimate, they're 100% legitimate, but then we at least understand how we got where we are.
Commissioner Zimbauer?
I was going to say PMA and our staff already does some of that tracking,
they
but
do.
if we need to drill down that further and add an extra column,
Yep.
that's
That's all
fine
I'm
as well. There's no doubt we're going to continue to have change orders, and there's going to be cost, overrides, and expenses are going to climb, especially in the market we're dealing with today. So with that said, I'll move approval of item 20.
I think I did already, so are you willing to second?
I'll second it if you did. I didn't hear that, my
I
apologies.
did.
I thought that's what you were going to do, Commissioner Zone, but I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah.
Any discussion? The only thing I'd like to add is I'd like to see that document of the increase in scopes.
The county manager's asking to be
I
heard.
understand that.
We will get that too. I was going to
Yes.
comment on that.
Miscellaneous or contingency, it's not for scope creep. It's for things that have increased in price, not that things are increasing in scope. And I'd like to see that document.
That's a fair request. We'll get that to you.
Any other discussion?
I want some clarification on that, just so we're clear. Are you saying that if staff decides that what was spec'd, there's now something that is a better method or product that is different than was originally spec'd, you don't want that to occur?
It's not what I said. What I said
Okay,
was
that's
that
all I need to know. Thank you.
saying scope creep. Scope creep is that, if you want to add another addition to something, this is actually, in my opinion, scope creep, because it's, if you look at the dollar figures, 20,000 basically to 300,000. There's something missing here. That's scope creep.
Okay.
That's not because they want a new widget.
Understand.
It's
Understood.
not because someone increased the price by 15 or 20 or 100%. It's a lot more than that. That's scope creep.
Okay.
Can we make it a drinking game?
Excuse me? We could make a drink
Scope
game if you
creep.
want.
Take a drink.
Did she say drinking?
And the reason why I'm bringing this up
I think
is
it's
because
good. It would make the meeting a lot more fun.
we have a finite pot of money that when the money is done, it's done. And I want to make sure that with all the items that we have, that's budgeted from that $266 million.
And as I said before,
$166 million.
the budget, will be under the budget what we approve for that building.
Well, we have a
according to our
long way to
consultant.
go yet, John, for that building and that project to be done.
Understand.
And I want to make sure that there's enough money to finish everything, and that the citizens are getting everything we talked about, and that we're not gold plating a building that doesn't need to be gold plated.
I understand.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Okay. We've already approved that with that one motion, item 26 and 27. So now we go to the county manager's report. Mr. Applegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, one of the nice things about being kind of near the end of the road and after 40-some years in government is to see bright young people working in Seminole County doing great things. And I'm going to ask Rachel Reckner, our senior graphics coordinator, to come down for a moment. And I'm going to pass this to the board. This is really pretty cool. Rachel has received 2 awards from the National Association of County Information Officers. The first one is the Award of Excellence for External Publications, the Winter Spring 2021 Seminole County Leisure Guide. And out of all those that competed, Rachel was the recipient of this award. And the second one is an Award of Excellence for the 2021 Annual Report.
Commissioner.
And again, Rachel was the recipient among a number of applicants for that. And I want to read very quickly what Ashley Moore has written. There are no words or accolades that measure up to the impact Rachel's had on our organization. Her can-do attitude, willingness to go the extra mile, and overall ability to multitask barely scratches the surface on why she's so wonderful. She's modernized the collateral our office creates, streamlined processes for graphics requests, and multitask with ease. Still, I fall short of describing her creativity and incredible talent. Simply put, we are very lucky to have Rachel. So, Rachel, want to say congrats, and just keep up the great work. We're very proud of what you've already accomplished, and I know that you're going to do great things in the future.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you.
We'll have to keep these in the commission record. When you'd like.
Okay, they belong here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We appreciate
Well done.
you.
Thank you. Good work.
Congratulations. You make us very proud.
Thank you.
Ashley, the pressure's on for a good picture, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
Would you like us in the picture?
That would be great.
Mr. Applegate, join us. Mr. Johnson, would you join us, please? We have someone else taking the photo. Mr. Applegate? Anything else?
Oh, yes. God, I wish everything I said was so well received. Actually, some more good news, and I know that this was mentioned at the EOC press conference yesterday, but we wanted to highlight the fact that on the mosquito control issue, thanks to the state and county's efforts on spraying, from the week of October 10th, in the traps, we had 56,000 plus, and just a week later, we were down to 7,000 plus. So great work on part of the state and, of course, our county's team on that. You all received a copy of the letter that legal sent to Dr. Bradley at Recovery House, Central Florida. The letter pointed out that the county has provided over $280,000 in operating expenses to them over time. The rent has only been $1 a year. The property was purchased for $500,000 back in 2013. And the letter states that they have until January 5th, and also that, of course, when that time comes, through community services, we will, if there's still issues about residents, we will provide the appropriate other nonprofits that can help with the residents.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Constantine?
Thank you. Just as a comment on that, I think all of us strongly support the Recovery House, their mission. We have done this time and again. We have given them money. But the point needs to be made that we've also given, how many, 3 extensions now?
A total of over 500 days of extensions.
And we're all very sympathetic and to the plight, but we need to we need to reiterate that we're not going to extend it again. And that they need to, whatever resources we can do to help them relocate, I think is important, but we are not in the position to extend it any longer.
That is correct. We need the project to move forward. I'm going to ask, without getting into details, what I've been working on in regards to restitution. I would like to request that you provide another $50,000 for attorney fees in regards to all restitution efforts involving the former tax collector and other parties. And I would ask that you do that just so that we can move forward with the next steps, if you will.
Commissioners?
So moved.
We have a motion. Commissioner Zimbow? Is that a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Zimbow?
So are you saying that we've exhausted all previously approved funding and we're asking for another $50,000? I think we gave you some latitude in the attorney's office to handle what needed to be handled. So just an idea. What have we spent thus far?
We're probably going to, right now, on the restitution, about $70,000.
So we're asking for another $50,000.
Right.
And we'll be asking for those fees as part of our discussion?
Correct. And
Very
also, we will be going, again,
Mr. Applegate, I understand the sensitivity of it all. I believe you've answered your questions.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Mr. Applegate?
And finally, our Public Information Office put out, I believe, you received these? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So I don't need to go over those, but amazing what was done in just the 2 weeks following the storm. They to be congratulated on that. And
that's it.
Just point out that I was contacted by counsel for the supervisor of elections office, and I know I briefed you individually on this somewhat. There was some look at the Burlington Coat Factory. Supervisor of Elections Office was suggesting that that might be a viable location. I told them I would bring that up to you at a meeting. The estimate was that it would cost $3 million to purchase and $4 million to renovate. I left a message yesterday with council to provide that information as far as the backup, particularly for the cost of renovation. And I'll just leave that as a report for now, if you will have any thoughts or comments on it. But
Commissioner Lockhart?
Well, I've already expressed to the supervisor of elections attorney that I don't feel that that would be a good use for that piece of property, particularly as the city of Sanford is looking toward redevelopment of that area. That was my immediate gut reaction.
Right, thank you.
Commissioner Herr?
I've not had any discussions with the supervisor or his attorney, but I do question why we continue to source opportunities other than the one that we're already spending money on figuring out whether, like, this is, I just do not understand it. And for the rest of the board, I did ask Mr. Applegate to investigate whether we're incurring cost to the taxpayers for all of these new ideas, because I just simply don't understand it. And so I would like that report back at some time.
I'm waiting on the information.
Any other comments? Mr. Applegate, move on, please.
That's all I have.
Mr. Chipak?
The only thing I would like to say is just to reiterate that the Yarborough Ranch Comprehensive Plan Amendment, item number 29, has been withdrawn, so there is no action for this board to take this afternoon. We did send out notice, posted it on Nextdoor, so hopefully the public is well informed, and if anybody's listening at home, please spread the word. It's not going to be undertaken this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion or questions for Mr. Applegate? Mr. Chipak? Commissioner Herr?
Just a question, since this is my first time with a complete withdrawal. So when we do public comment this afternoon, there is no public comment.
Just be noted that it's been withdrawal. We're moving on.
That is correct.
Thought we might want to get that out there. There's no public comment.
Since it's been withdrawn, there's no action for the board to take.
Understood.
So my understanding, just for the record, when it comes up to the agenda item, which is agenda item number 29, will be, Mr. Chipak will be talking about very quickly that this item has been pulled in total and that there is no other further action that needs to be taken at this time. Then we're going to move on to item number 30. I mean, item 30 has already been done, so then we'll go to the county manager report.
Yep. Thank you.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. At this time, we'll be in recess. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make one comment.
Go right ahead.
I did not speak a lot on either one of the subjects on 6 or 20 or on the election supervisor, but I just wanted to comment that I think that the inquiries that were made are a subject of each one of our commissioners trying to be good stewards and have all the information that they can, and not necessarily trying to micromanage anything. And I just respected, the discussion that was made by whether it would be on item number 6 or 20 or now with the supervisor. I think we really, all of us are just, if we don't have the information, we want the information. Some of us have it, some of us didn't have it. Not that anybody withheld anything from us, but these are the things we just wanted to be sensitive to show that what we need. And this is not directed to you.
No, I hope,
Mr. Applegate. I'm very pleased with the information I'm receiving, but I am glad that we are constantly seeking new information so that we can be good stewards of our budget and of the resources of our people.
I hope I didn't say anything to imply the opposite.
No. I wanted this to be known to everyone, because I really am very pleased when we start asking these questions when we don't have the reason or we don't feel that we have everything that we need. I just wanted to make that comment.
Seeing no other comments, this meeting is in recess until 1:30 this afternoon.